Welcome to No Player Connected. I'm your host, Professor Jam, and today we aren't playing Dwarf Fortress, but we are going to talk about this game with expert artificer. Is it artificer or artificer? You make artifacts.
Artificer.
Artificer? Alright, yeah. I tried to make myself sound more fancy. And Zumbini Understander, TrashMack. and then if you want to say hello or hi.
I did. Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me. I did not expect that. Okay. Yeah, I'll take it.
All right. Okay. You do, and we'll get to it later, but you do make some really cool artifacts and stuff. So I thought it was a cool little title for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let's just dive right in. What is this strange game that we're talking about today, Mac?
Well, it's an interesting one. A lot of people look at it and are quite daunted. I can understand why. So, Dwarf Fortress was first released in 2006, roughly, by Tarn and Zach Adams. So it's made by two people. And the Steam release came out in 2022, the paid version, or the premium version, if you want to be fancy. It's described by most as like a part construction and management sim, part roguelike. I've heard it be called just like a civ builder. I personally refer to it as a story generator. Basically, you start off with 7 dwarves, you pick a place to embark, and you're on your own. I'd say the goal then is to build a fort, but you don't have to if you don't want to. There's many different ways to play the game. There's no end goal, there's no quests or anything like that. It's very much a sandbox game where here is your starting dwarves, survive, good luck, have fun.
And that word fun has kind of a special meaning with Dwarf Fortress, especially if you put you put exclamation points before it and after it.
Yes, losing is fun is the catchphrase, because playing this game you will lose a lot. And that's okay, because you will probably lose in the most ridiculous way possible.
What do you mean by that? For folks that may not be acquainted with all of the terrible, hilarious ways you can lose in this game.
So, Dwarf Fortress is incredibly detailed. There are many layers to the game and its depth. A good example would be to look at the dwarves themselves. You know, each one of their teeth is a separate entity. Their nails, their nervous system, their skin. So, it can get really, really in-depth with those things, which means you get fun things like, I remember watching an interview where they discussed a story where they had to patch out cats getting drunk. And what would happen is someone would spill beer on the ground, the cats would walk through it, they would then lick their paws when they were cleaning themselves and get drunk. That's the kind of level of detail that we're looking for. But in the ridiculous ways that your fort can die, you can flood it with water, you can flood it with lava, you can get a vampire might come in and just decide to start picking off your dwarves in their sleep. A were creature might come through and spread the were creatureness disease, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, you say lycanthropy, except you can have
were giraffes.
Yeah, I have a were jaguar locked up. Or wait, is it a jaguar or a panther? I have some sort of were big cat that I have living in my walls right now. In my fort.
I've had many a were kangaroo, were pangolins, like all of the animals. So you can't really say the werewolves. Obviously, you can have sieges, goblins can come through, you can piss off the elves can come through, humans. I don't know if it's as bad in the premium version as it was in the free version, but a couple of updates ago, you could have a loyalty cascade where your dwarves would just get so upset and they would all of the entire fort would just spiral into killing each other and everything. And it was just massacre all the way down. And there are, of course, some other ways that your fort can fail that are unexpected if you dig too deep and are too greedy.
Yeah, I feel like we have to do the time-honored tradition, at least for the beginning of the episode, of not spoiling what's down there. Except for bountiful riches that you should definitely go for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dig straight down. Go for it.
Straight down. Go get that candy. Go get it.
Yeah, don't follow Minecraft rules. Dig straight down. No
straight
stairway.
down.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
What do you play the game for? Do you play it for that challenge? Do you play it to see stories unfold in front of you? What do you get out of Dwarf Fortress?
Definitely stories. For me, it's absolutely a story generator. I love looking into the dwarves and reading about their personalities, their likes, their dislikes, their families, what sort of things they create, the relationships they build in the fort, the books they write. I am a big fan of creating a story and just seeing where it goes, really. And also the creative aspect. I enjoy building the forts, and I'm very much a aesthetics over functionality, because you can make something aesthetic functional, but it's hard to make something functional aesthetic. So I always go for how pretty can I make this look, and then can I make it useful?
See, when I look at your streams when you're playing this, it looks like it's both. Like when I make a fort, I tend to try to just mass produce things. So I'll carve out a room and I'll be like, all right, 10 stone cutters workstations right there. Mm-hmm. Get it done. And then I look at yours and like there are somehow circles in the square world that we live in. The floor is paved with something that isn't cave moss. I don't see vomit or blood on the ground, which is pretty common in this game.
Oh,
for
very
those that
common.
don't know. Yeah, and so that kind of surprises me because I look at your stuff and it looks so sleek, it looks so pretty, but it also looks like it works really well.
I definitely have a long way to go, and there are people out there that have built much nicer forts than me. I personally am a big fan of Cupo's forts. She creates the most trippy, like drug-induced 70s, 60s forts, disco strobing ridiculousness. That's the level I strive for. But I just like the pretty corners. A circle is just a square with round edges. That
checks out. As someone who despised math and geometry classes, I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah.
Oh god, the fact that you said you have a long way to go makes me feel pretty good. That means I'm like chapter 1 of my journey, perhaps 2, and you're like chapter 10.
Yeah, look. I reckon you've got one up on me purely because you know how to use pump stacks.
Oh my god. Okay, so for folks that aren't necessarily familiar, a pump stack is a way of transferring liquid from one level to another, because you can go up and down, left to right, but you can also go up Z levels in this game. And for the longest time, I just didn't know how to do that. And so I decided to learn on a fort that has magma 100 levels beneath where I wanted it to be. And so for baby's first pump stack, I decided to have 100 of them pumping magma up from the bowels of the earth, which I compared it. A friend of mine was messaging me about this, and I said it was like eating a Go-Gurt. Have you ever had a Go-Gurt before?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, because I didn't have enough dwarves to man the entire system. And so I would squeeze the magma up a little bit, and then the dwarves would have to scurry up to the next level to pump it up higher. And so I was treating the magma of the earth as Go-Gurt and putting it in my mouth. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, you should have tried hooking it up to some windmills or water mills.
Hindsight's whatever numbers mean good eyesight. So
2020.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
So, we were talking about collapses earlier. Do you have any particularly noteworthy or exciting collapses that you've experienced in this game? Because again, like, losing is quote unquote supposed to be fun. Oops, somebody fell in the magma pit. We'll have a little laugh about that afterwards. Do you have any experiences like that you'd want to share?
Absolutely. Many, many, many. I think my most not deliberate catastrophic, because I've had one catastrophic failure that was deliberate, but it was in a fort called Post Scratches. And this fort was entirely cat themed because I base my forts generally, when I'm starting an embark, I'll have a look at what the civilizations are that I can pick from. And I will base the theme of my entire fort around that civ name, and I believe the civ was called the Door of Cats, something along those lines, and I'm like, well, that's it. I'm going to take that and run with it. And I was pretty far into this fort, and but I hadn't finished a few key areas that I normally have done first, which is a trap tunnel, and I didn't have any... Well, I had a squad, but they'd recently... my army had recently gone out and fought, I believe it was a Cyclops, and I lost most of them in that fight.
The Great Cyclops conflict.
Yeah, so I had no army or anything like that. I had areas of my fort open that would normally be closed because I was sort of moving things around.
Right.
And I had a Hydra come through. And this was terrifying because it was fast. I was not able to get any of my drawbridges closed. I was not able to lock down the fort safely. It made it inside. I had to throw all of my dwarves at it to eventually take it down. So this was a fort of, I think it was about 150 dwarves. Went down to 25, and half of those 25 were children.
Interesting. Normally my children are on the front lines, and so they're the first ones to go.
Mine were all pretty deep. I managed to take it down before it actually got deep into the fortress. Most of those deaths were me basically filling up squads with random dwarves and throwing them at this thing to try and kill it. And then I had to try and rebuild a fort that was running smoothly with 150, and I had to do that with about 10 dwarves. Because this was in the classic Dwarf Fortress. So in Premium Dwarf Fortress, the Steam release, children are able to do chores. That was not the case. They were useless, and they like to play with their toys in the most infuriating of areas. So, first I have to clean out all the bodies, and that took a long time. Clean up all the blood. I think it took me several years to recover, like in-game years to recover from that failure.
And how was the morale? Like, were they all just incredibly depressed while they were cleaning up the fort and acknowledging that everyone was dead?
They weren't happy, not gonna lie, but it got to a point where you can look at a dwarf's thoughts, and nearly all of them were like, such and such felt nothing next to a corpse. So I kind of numbs them all to it by the end of it.
Yeah, there's some, fucked up dwarven science that's been done where people are like, how do I desensitize my children so that they'll be perfect soldiers by the time they reach adulthood? And then you'll get links to even older forum posts like, well, I've set up a room that will perfectly stab dwarves until they're expert dodgers, and then you fire coins at them. Yeah, it's great, and I feel like the depth of the game allows for, like you had said before, like really cool storytelling, seeing what their thoughts are, the art that they've created, but then it's a video game, so people are going to try to min-max it. Yeah. At times. My favorite is I heard about a training pool to teach dwarves how to swim, which is like they sort of lock the dwarves in a room and flood it. They learn to swim. Yeah, it's insight into dwarven parenting. Yeah, do not look up dwarven daycare if you want to if you're like eating or care about your little digital guys. It's gonna either make you laugh or make you a little sad. Yeah. I remember someone had a forgotten beast whose extract or its blood or there was something that a forgotten beast was excreting from its body. What? Well, no, because it melted like fat and skin or something.
Oh.
And so, if I'm remembering it correctly, the person realized that it made the dwarves not feel pain after whatever part of their body was getting burnt off. And
no.
They were like exposing their military dwarves to this stuff, and then they were like, I mean, dwarves are already pretty beefy and able to kill shit, but they were like, they couldn't feel pain anymore on top of...
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was fucked. It ruled. It was awesome.
Oh, no, that was awesome, but that's the sort of things that you can expect in Dwarf Fortress. That level of depth, and that level of just, what the fuck?
You mentioned that Hydra. Now, did it have... It can't regenerate its heads, can it?
I believe it had multiple heads, but I don't think it regenerated them. I'd have to go back and watch it, because the whole thing is on YouTube. Me reacting to it and the thing going down. There is footage of it happening. I honestly, in the chaos, can't say that I remember.
In combat in Dwarf Fortress is also really in-depth, detailed. I would say almost to a fault. Like, one of the things that I take issue with Dwarf Fortress is in combat you'll get things like the axe dwarf used his left pinky to grab the third tooth of so-and-so. But with a Hydra or anything that's, a big beastie, like biting down on shit will kill you dead pretty quickly. So I imagine... Well, I don't even have to imagine. You told me it killed... it almost killed everybody.
Many people, yeah. I mean, I think that's hilarious, the combat side of things. I mentioned the trap tunnel. So my favourite way to set up a trap tunnel is I basically make a meat grinder. I have a thin platform, which I fill with basically buzzsaws, large serrated discs. And the reason I put it on a thin platform is the way Dwarf Fortress works is if an enemy comes up to a trap, they will try to dodge away from it, and so I put them over a pit, so they'll try to dodge the buzzsaw, and if they don't dodge it, they'll get hit by it. If they do dodge it, they fall down 10 sea levels to their death. Either way. But the thing about the buzzsaws is I think they can hit multiple times in one go, and when they kill something, it's messy. There are teeth and toes and fingers and skin, and it just goes everywhere. It really makes the most of the dwarves, or, enemies in general. Creatures are made up of many different parts.
Yeah, very multifaceted in that there are many parts that you can rip off of something, including in-combat castrations.
Yes.
I've seen quite a few Reddit posts that are like, look, this goblin shot his dick off.
Yep.
Very highbrow stuff right next to, like, this game is so beautiful and intricately crafted. Here's my fan art. And then right below that is goblin who shot someone's dick off, and now the guy's puking mid-battle.
Oh, yeah. They're just throwing up everywhere, walking around in their own vomit, covered in their own blood.
It rocks.
It does. It's the best game, and I love it.
I also love when there's the combat log, it'll show like all the intricate attacks, and sometimes they'll make remarks like, so-and-so has died, or I've been wounded, I need help. But then afterwards, like after the conflict, it'll kind of stay in effect, like it'll report what the dwarf is doing and if they're saying anything. And I had one of my, and again, this is classic dwarven parenting. One of my little guys, one of my children, went apeshit after either not being able to make an artifact, or maybe I let someone's parents rot out in the open. I can't remember. But he threw a little tantrum, and a nearby worker dwarf just grabbed him and choked him to death. And then the dialogue afterwards was like, I feel relaxed. Or something like,
yeah,
I've improved wrestling. How splendid.
I love that one. I used to, it was easy to do with classic Dwarf Fortress, but I had my announcements in a separate window, and there's a line of code that you can change in Dwarf Fortress. I believe you can do it in Premium as well, but you can make those dwarves' thoughts appear in the announcements window.
Oh.
It tanks your FPS a little bit, but It's fine. That's one of the things that can kill your fort is an FPS death. It'll happen inevitably. But reading the dwarves' thoughts, the things that they were just randomly thinking as they went about their day, is hilarious. My favourite one was whenever a dwarf had a baby and the rest of the family would put in their 2 cents about it. And it was always hilarious when they said something along the lines of, I don't feel joy from this.
Oh.
I'm not happy about this.
I don't like babies.
Yeah, or if they were like, flirting or chatting. It's just, I think that's what adds to it for me. If you want to befriend the dwarves, if you want to personally know your dwarves, I definitely think it's important to have that turned on, those thoughts turned on, so you can really get a snippet into how they work, because the dwarves themselves, not only physically are they very detailed in this game, but mentally they are as well. I mentioned they have likes, they have dislikes, preferred materials that they like things to be made out of, favourite foods, their gods, family members. It just goes on and on.
Yeah, they can develop like, oh, I don't like that person, or oh, that's my buddy. They have arguments. They
experience the rain and now they dislike something. Those sorts of things can happen.
Yeah, I got caught out in the rain and I'm gonna punch this guy who I just met yesterday.
Yeah.
And then the fort falls apart.
Yeah.
You mentioned like getting to know your dwarves and caring about them and all their little intricacies. I wanted to know, do you ever reach the threshold of not caring if they live or die? Like, obviously, it's worse when they die. Like, you're like, oh no, my little dude. But when does that emotional connection go away? Because there was an article I read like a long ass time ago. They called it like the monkey sphere or whatever. Like, how many monkeys can you hang out with and have under your care before you stop caring about that? Like, if one of them got into an accident and died.
Yeah.
And I was wondering what your threshold is for dwarves with that.
Okay. The bigger the fort is, obviously, the harder it is to know each and every dwarf individually, because forts can get as big as, 500 dwarves. At the start, I try to get to know my starting 7, but as a streamer, my viewers will ask for named dwarves. So I definitely tend to grow more attached to named dwarves than unnamed dwarves. Well, nicknamed dwarves, I should say. They all have their own individual names. But I definitely think I grow more attached to dwarves that are either nicknamed or they do incredible things. They don't even have to be dwarves. I had a human beast killer staying in my fort, and she killed 2 forgotten beasts.
Damn.
On her own. And I was very upset when the 3rd one got her.
Oh.
I think I would definitely have to say, the bigger the fort, the harder it is to really be like, I don't want to kill this dwarf. It sort of becomes more of, you are going to be a quick sacrifice while I mine out this lava to make sure that it gets to where it needs to go.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't a monster, because you were talking about, like, looking at their thoughts and editing the files so you can get to know them better, and I was like, well...
I'll massacre a bitch.
Yeah, sometimes they don't outrun the magma, and it's
Dwarves are stupid.
Yes.
Dwarves are very, very, very stupid. You can do everything in your power to keep them alive, and they will still deconstruct the floor underneath their fellow dwarf, and then that dwarf will fall to their death because you're trying to, change the floor out for something, or who knows what you're doing. They're not bright.
Yeah, if you put an open hallway in front of a dwarf and then a little side room with one opening to it, and you tell them, hey, wall off that opening, they'll climb into the room and then seal themselves in.
Yeah.
And then slowly dehydrate because you forgot that you set them on that easy task.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to take off my sock right in this doorway.
Oh, God.
To be fair, though, if I were to take off an article of clothing and leave it in a doorway, I would assume it wouldn't wedge the door open for all eternity. But that just seems to be a special Dwarf Fortress mechanic, because that can happen
Or
with,
there was a cat standing there, and they can't build it now because the cat was standing there for one frame.
You bring up cats. When cats kill, like, vermin, the remains will get left behind. And then if they're in a doorway, the door's just stuck open. So if you killed a dragonfly, it's the world's fucking largest dragonfly, apparently, because we can't close the door.
No, don't know how to do that. That's not possible.
Dwarven science just isn't there yet.
No.
I did want to share one of my big collapses with you.
Please do.
And then it ties into a game mode that I'm looking forward to with Dwarf Fortress. But I had a fort where I basically tried to make a dedicated living area separate from where dwarves would either be training in the military or working their jobs. And I thought it was really neat. I thought it was great. I didn't see any problems with it until a forgotten beast showed up. And I still remember it was made of some crystalline structure, I think. It was definitely at least made out of rock, but it was a forgotten beast that was like a snail, I want to say. It was some kind of invertebrate, yucky thing. And my military rushed down to go fight it. And while they were doing that, a goblin ambush had sprung. The civilian area was, like, it had a choke point, which separated it from the rest of the fort. But the goblin ambush basically cut it off from anywhere that they could escape. And so basically all my civilians got cornered by goblins. And this forgotten beast, I think it had some kind of... can they shoot steam out of them? Like, can they can shoot something out
dust.
of them? That's what it was. It was dust. And it just kept, like... It had the dust, and then it just kept pushing my dwarves against walls. Like, it wasn't... Like they would just go flying back and hit the wall. And so I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna flood the mines that it's in. And it climbed into, like, a little air pocket and stayed completely dry while the remainder of my military either drowned or got, like, crushed to death by it. And then all the civilians were getting butchered by goblins. And it was just such a weird, like, getting hit by two things at once moment. And this was in classic Dwarf Fortress. And so I went into adventure mode, which isn't around in the premium Dwarf Fortress yet. And I made a, like, Mary Sue, like, maxed out, like, all the stats. I think you can pick, like, what is it, demigod for their stats so that you can customize them. Not super important, but I took this adventure and I went back to that fort location, and he killed all the goblin invaders that had taken all of the stuff and strewn it across the surrounding, like, countryside, like, up top. And then I found the forgotten beast, and, like, it was this knockdown, drag out fight where my little adventure guy got pretty banged up. And he got the job done, and then he leaves the fort and then froze to death. Like, everything was dead. There wasn't a single thing left in the fort moving. It was this weirdly, like, poetic outro, or what would you call it, an epilogue to the fortress's story.
That's phenomenal. I haven't actually messed around in adventure mode. That's the one thing I haven't touched. I don't know why. I think I like the fort building, the fortress mode, more. I enjoy it more, having to look over that micromanagement of lots of little dwarves than trying to figure out one adventuring around. I see the appeal in it, though.
I think it just goes in depth in different ways, but fortress mode just gives you so much more stimuli. With adventure mode, you can go out and explore and go to different places, but you can't build a whole lot. I think you can, like, I will take this rock and sharpen it or something, or I will pick up this thing and throw it. It's still really cool to go out and explore and visit your previous forts that have been abandoned or maybe are still functioning. I know people would set up, like, basically little dungeons to explore after they're done with their fort as an adventurer. and I can't wait to see what they do with it for the Steam release.
I am excited. I will admit that I am definitely excited to see where it goes, because it is another amazing storytelling feature. That and Legends mode, which is really just a library of everything that's happened in the world you've created.
It's mind-blowing, because I don't dabble a whole lot with Legends mode. But Legends mode is like if they just instantly made like a wiki for your world that you've generated. Would you say that's a decent
I'd say that's
comparison?
pretty good, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, anyone who's done anything ever in your world, and even people who haven't done anything ever, you can look them up in your Legends. I think, right? Like if a baby is just born, I could look that baby up in Legends
I
mode.
believe so, yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's intense, so you can look into other civilizations, or you've stumbled across an artifact, you want to know more about it, where did it come from? Or just a person, in particular, or a god even. It's the depth, man. Depth.
Well, you called it a story generator before, and I've heard some people will just use Legends mode to generate a setting for like a tabletop RPG campaign.
Oh.
They'll just be like, bada bing, bada boom, here's a world for my players to explore, and here are the rulers, here's the main geographical features, here's the religions, all made by my computer.
It'd take a lot of the work out of it.
Yeah, as someone who enjoys the social studies and history and all that junk, the religion stuff really gets me excited, because I eventually hope, when they hook Tarn up to a robot body and he can live forever and just keep toiling on this. I just want like completely fleshed out cultures, religions. I want dwarves to not be able to fucking understand each other because they speak different languages. I want it all. I just want to be able to simulate reality. I want my dwarfs. I want them playing Dwarf Fortress in Dwarf Fortress eventually.
Yes, I'm right there with you. I will die on that hill with you. I'm totally there for it. The more depth, the better. I want dwarves going to war because just different beliefs, I want the writing as well. Oh, it's so great. Also, I'm just saying that because there is a whole language in Dwarf Fortress. I think there's multiple languages.
Yes.
But Dwarvish is the main one, that your dwarves speak. And I'd like a few more words added to that vocabulary as well. Like, the word for dwarf.
Wait, the dwarves don't have a word for dwarf?
I don't believe so, no.
Well, do they have a word for, like, people?
I don't know if they have one for people, because I was recently, my latest fort, which still put a pin in that one, was based on Red Dwarf. So I tried to call it Red Dwarf, but in Dwarvish, and I couldn't find a word for dwarf, so instead I went for the Red Tomb of Man.
Oh yeah,
as close as I could get.
I was getting confused because I remember you calling your fort Red Dwarf, and then I did hear you say Red Tomb of Man. Yep. I was like, are those the same thing? Or
yep.
What's going on there?
That's as close as I could get to Red Dwarf.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I haven't delved too much into the linguistics of Dwarf Fortress. I'm usually too busy like dying to something.
Fair.
But that's really cool. Are there any other, like, aside from the desperately needed linguistic tweaks, are there any other features that you're either looking forward to on the roadmap or just something off the top of your head that you'd want to see specifically included in the game?
Definitely what you mentioned. I'd love anything that adds to the storytelling, to the depth, to the lore. Love lore. More lore, please. I'm curious. Ooh. So I was taking a quick peek at the roadmap, I guess, for features that they're going to try to implement in the future. And I think the most fascinating one for me is the villains stuff.
Oh, really?
And I'd like to see the rest of that fleshed out because... So you've got an artifact in your fort, right? An artifact is a really expensive, well, sometimes it can be dirt cheap, but it's an expensive, fancy piece of anything, really, furniture. And so you've got it in your fort on display somewhere because it's really nice. And you've got a tavern in your fort, and you've got random people coming in and out of your tavern. Someone that comes into your tavern might want that artifact. So one of your dwarves will go and take it, hand it over to the thief, and then they'll leave with the artifact. If you've got a vampire in your fort, they will have... There's every possibility, I don't know if it's every time, but they will most likely be under a fake name. There's that sort of scheming sort of thing going on, and I think I'd love to see more of that.
Okay. Yeah, I know that they've got there's a justice system in Dwarf Fortress, but I'm sure it'll get more detailed over time. We'll have dwarves collecting fingerprints and dwarves committing tax evasion and stuff. Although there aren't taxes. We don't have an economy.
No, I believe there was one briefly, but it got taken out. And I think they'd like to put that one back in. It's
such a weird thing because on one hand, like you said, any amount of depth, put that shit in my veins. That sounds great. Mm-hmm. But Dwarf Fortress is a game where if they act like their goofy little selves and act in their self-interests or act stupidly, which sometimes people do when profit motive is involved, shit will just go awry. And so I don't know if I want my dwarves just saying, no, I don't think I will build the well. It's going to cut into my profits. Fuck you.
Yeah, there's a fine line. There's definitely a fine line there. I don't mind how it is at the moment. And I think a lot of the work going into the game at the moment is to get ready for Myths and Magic. But it is a long way away.
Yeah. The roadmap is insane. And you brought up Myths and Magic. That's another thing that I'm really looking forward to, because as it stands right now, the only type of magic in the game is necromancy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then whatever elves use to grow their furniture.
Yeah.
Unless that's just a load of hooey and they're chopping down trees like the rest of us.
Whatever makes them sleep at night.
Yeah, only magic is raising people from the dead, and I want to see people throwing fireballs. I want to see geomancy. Is there a particular school of magic you'd like to see included?
Honestly, my main interest there is I just want to see how it will work. I think I'm more interested in the mechanics of that one, of how's this going to play out? How is it spells? Is it wands? Is it books? Is it glyphs? How are we going to do this? What's it going to look like? That's I think what I want to know. That's
a way more reasonable and cool thought than I want to see fireballs. I want to see lightning. I didn't even think about are they going to like you said, runic magic? Do you have to use a scroll? Do you need some sort of way to channel your powers? Are they going to need to study from books? Is it hereditary at all? Holy shit, yeah, you just opened up a whole new thing in my brain. And since it's Dwarf Fortress, I'm going to have unrealistically high expectations that they will include all of those systems that I just mentioned and 5 more.
I mean, you're not wrong. Probably will, eventually. And if they don't do it, the modders will.
Yeah, the modding community is crazy. I don't do a ton with mods, but I've seen people mention them. Obviously, there's a bunch of mods for accessibility and tweaking the UI for the game.
DF Hack is a godsend.
Yeah, I've seen you use that a few times, right? You use that on your stream?
Yeah, I use DF Hack. I've used DF Hack is the only way I could play the game originally, because classic Dwarf Fortress is scary to look at. It's very daunting if you've never seen it before. It's all ASCII, it's all bright colours, it's all keyboard, it's daunting. It's very, very daunting.
You're staring into the Matrix.
Pretty much, yeah. What DF Hack does is it gives you a little bit of quality life improvements. You can use the mouse and that sort of stuff. And I'd also use a tile set so I could actually see what I'm looking at. Some people are very much purists in that sense, where they wouldn't use a tile set. That's, it's up to personal preference, really. I couldn't tell things apart. So I am very grateful for the Steam release having the graphics and the nice UI and that sort of thing. But DF Hack it helps with those really big builds, those fancy builds that you sort of see me and others doing, because it can really easily create circles for you, Things that you look at it and go, oh god, what if there's one pixel out of place and then it's going to be off and the whole fort's ruined? DF Hack helps you sort of navigate those things.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about the ASCII art, another little quirk about it, and if I'm remembering this correctly, because it's been a long while since I played with just ASCII art, doesn't it make the tiles for the game aren't they technically rectangles rather than perfect squares?
Yes.
Yeah, that drove me crazy. When someone pointed that out to me, it was like some sort of Lovecraftian, like I glimpsed forbidden knowledge I wasn't supposed to see.
Yep.
It was like, oh my god, it's all rectangles. There are no squares here. So that's, on top of all the reasons you mentioned, I need my squares.
Yeah, no, squares are a must. I need to be able to, do math while playing this, so I get all my all symmetrical and numbers right, and it's got to be pretty, goddammit.
It must be pretty, or at least attempt to be pretty. That's what I try to do. Eventually, I'm like, all right, you guys get paved roads. Maybe if you act right and we survive a few years, you get. I might
smooth this out for you. Maybe.
You've drawn a fair bit of artifacts that your dwarves have made. Do you have a favorite that you've recreated?
I was gonna say the gauntlet that I made, but today I was working on some, and a goosebone crown.
Ooh.
Called, Route Stroked. So, let's see, this is a goosebone crown worth 80k.
80?
80.
Holy shit.
All craft dwarfship is of the highest quality. It is decorated with goosebone and bullshark, encircled with bands of iron, oval quartzite cabochons, and oval red pyro cabochons. I'm really proud of how this one came out. Drawing these artifacts out is a task in and of itself, because you have to sort of pull apart each one of the pieces of what it's made of, what materials is it made of, how is it decorated, and then how can I transfer that into a working artifact or object, everyday object. Dwarves like to cover things in spikes. It's very heavy metal of them. And I don't want these artifacts to end up looking like the phones on Death Clock, the death phones, where they're just pinching them and the thing is covered in spikes. Don't get me wrong, it's metal. Metal as fuck, I'm here for it. But I think the dwarves would be a little bit more, this is still a usable object, so I have to sort of, how am I going to make this work? And I'm really proud of how this crown has come out.
That's awesome. That's a really good point about the spikes. That's something that I'm kind of surprised that they haven't, with all the depth that this game has, that they haven't added more ways for dwarves to decorate their artifacts. Because you will get things like, it is encircled with bands of cloth and spikes of cloth. And on the image of cloth is an image of cloth on cloth. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and did I mention there's spikes of cloth on it?
Oh yeah, hanging rings of cloth.
Oh yeah, hanging rings of cloth too.
You can't forget that, yeah.
Yeah, that's crucial, but... I'm
actually just reading over the description now and I'm realizing that I forgot the hanging rings of silver, so I don't know how I'm going to cheat that in, but we'll cross that bridge later.
You'll have to prepare a public apology to the dwarves.
I think so, yeah.
They deserve at least that much.
They do.
If you could pick one of either one of the Beastmen races from the game, or a group from outside, like a different fantasy setting or different mythology, what would you bring to the game? Or if you could uplift one of the Beastmen civilizations to be a full-fledged, kind of like the elves.
Plump helmet men.
Plump helmet men?
Plump helmet men.
What does a plump helmet man civilization look like?
I want a mushroom kingdom. I would love a mushroom kingdom. Just giant mushrooms everywhere. Some real hidden grove, like deep in the caves.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Glowing fungus, moss, just that sort of thing. Hidden underground waterfalls. That's what I want, and I want to be able to play as Plump Helmet Man because I think they are adorable.
That was one of the like hidden questions I didn't give you ahead of time, and that was like one of the fastest responses to one of those. Plump Helmet Man, put him in, get him in there.
Put him in. Get him in there. Like,
they're ready.
There's a lot. Don't get me wrong. I remember when the sprites were being released for the Steam version, and some of the creature sprites, and there was a worm man. He came a close second. Came a very close second.
The worm people.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wish they could all just like maybe during World Gen it randomly picks like 2 or 3. And says, okay, we're gonna like flesh these out completely. I imagine that would be a lot of work on the back end because you'd have to determine like, you know, what's their civilization gonna look like value wise, like with their morals and shit like that. But I'm a gamer, and that means I have unrealistic expectations, and I get upset when they're not met. So
Yep. No,
make it happen.
Yep. No, I want it now. I want it yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, if I could have all of them, I'd have all of them. But I think Plump Helmet Man would have to be up there.
Yeah, they're cute. They're cute, and I would
they
never
don't have
fight
faces.
them. Oh my!
I don't know how they'd survive, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, they're little mushroom guys. They have their own wacky way of surviving.
Exactly. This is fantasy. Anything can be possible.
Exactly. Would you rather live in a dwarf fortress for 1 year or have to raise a dwarven toddler for 6 months?
Oh! I'd rather live in the fort.
It's that bad? The children are that bad?
Well, I don't like children to begin with. I very quickly punt that thing across the room. I would sacrifice it to the volcano gods very quickly.
No, like real life. Like, you don't have total control over it. Like, it's just in your house.
No. Yeah, it's that bad. I'd definitely take living in a fortress for a year, because with a dwarven toddler, I'd probably find them standing in the middle of the road playing with a puzzle box, because that's just what they do. You know, they like to stand in the refuse piles and play.
Do you have a refuse pile at home?
Sure, why not? Well, I've got a cat. They probably stand in the litter box.
Judgment free if you've got a magma forge in your house and other such hazards. I don't know what things are like.
This is how I roll. Yeah, well, then they'd stand in the litter box just for the sake of it. The toilet, you know, just weird shit. I would definitely go for living in the fort. That way, at least, if I'm going to go down, I can go down in a blaze of glory.
Well, see, another thing that I'm thinking about here, because when I think of living in a dwarven fortress, I'm thinking of all the terrible things, but I'm looking at my fort right now, and there are people who've just been in my tavern for like 2 years, just getting pissed drunk, like not doing anything. So I think that could be doable. I have the opposite concern when it comes to the dwarven child. I'm worried that like it's gonna kill me. I've seen so many dwarven children in my games just haul off and like hit people or hit animals, and they're strong. And so I don't want to just like, I didn't play with this kid enough and he's gonna choke me now.
I haven't seen that a lot. I haven't really had that problem. I've had more, they just stand in the worst places and they will not move. Because you can't control them. You can't tell them what to do. So that's more my thing. I would, in the fort, I'd hang out in like a library. I tend to build like libraries and museums in my forts. So I'd hang out there and just read.
Oh, that'd be cool. Maybe become a necromancer if you get lucky.
Hopefully, we can only hope. And then turn anything that's dead near me back to life when I get spooked by something.
Nice. I'm glad we're in agreement on choosing the fort life, but for different reasons. I kind of just outed myself as not being good at taking care of my dwarven children in my forts, but...
I mean, so did I. And honestly, I would be a little bit terrified if you picked the child over the fort.
Yeah,
Some hard judgment there.
They're scary. They scare me. Anything from the Dwarf Fortress world in our real world would scare me. I think I would just do better being protected by a Dwarf Fortress. Like, even the fucking ghosts. Like, in our world, ghosts, verdict's out. Who knows? In Dwarf Fortress, like, I can watch a public official get his leg ripped off in the middle of the street by a ghost.
Yeah, it's definitely a much more violent world, and you probably won't make the year, to be honest. But at least it'll be funny. You'll see some shit, and you'll be pissed drunk while doing it because dwarves only drink alcohol.
Yeah, like, I don't know, I think that's a trap that a lot of new players fall into, where they're like, I'm by a river. I don't have to worry about them drinking anything. It's like, well, little do you know. They're fueled by alcohol.
They're by the river, but they forget to set it up as a water zone. So they won't drink from it anyway.
Again, dwarves are stupid.
Dwarves are stupid. They're so stupid. It's definitely, for new players, I would say that the important things that you need to at least learn first is drink, food, and shelter, in that order. Actually, alcohol, shelter, and food. Food, shove it over a little bit, but they're going to get upset if they're outside too long or they get caught in the rain. So just dig down into the ground, put down a still, put down a kitchen. If you can get a bit of alcohol going, then, you're pretty stable. You can keep going from there. If you get a stable that setup, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Get a house, get wasted, question mark.
Profit.
Yeah, probably rich.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. What's your stance on nobles? Are they a challenge that should be embraced, or pests that should be exterminated? Not to get political here.
Yeah, definitely not to get political. I'm very much on the fence when it comes to nobles, because my end goal is always to become the mountain home. I love it. I think it's great. I love it when, like, the queen or the king shows up. I love building them big, lavish areas. But I am not afraid to show a noble the way to a lever of importance.
And what is a lever of importance?
You put a lever on the other side of a drawbridge, and that drawbridge retracts instead of opens or closes. And basically, the dwarf pulling the lever has to be standing on that trapdoor to pull it. So they pull it, the floor comes out from underneath them, and they drop into whatever fun, exciting thing you have put below it, whether that be water, magma, spikes, crocodiles, snakes, just a deep well into nothing. Yeah, that's sort of what that is. It's an easy and quick way to rid yourself of nobles without upsetting the dwarves too much, because it was an accident.
Yeah, do they care a ton if the nobility dies?
Not really. I think it depends on how they die, but not really.
So long as they don't have to see it, I think they're usually pretty good.
As long as they don't have to see it, and it's not like a murder. But say you accidentally flood their room with magma. They're going to be okay with that.
Yeah, no evidence of wrongdoing here. It just seems like a freak accident.
If a noble is become too annoying, whether that be they're demanding that I create too many items, or they've just gotten depressed for some reason, then I'll, nod towards the lever and be like, hey, go pull that for me for a sec. just go over there real quick. But yeah, I'm pretty cool with nobles for the most part. There's been a slight difference in, at least I think, I can't say for sure, but between premium and classic when it comes to nobles. Vampires generally become mares because they're very charismatic creatures. So I'll lock them away, right? I'll lock them up.
Right.
And make them the manager or the bookkeeper, and they can just sit there forever and they'll never come out, and they won't die because they don't need to eat or drink or sleep, and it'll be fine. And I can continue on about my merry way. But it doesn't quite work like that in Premium, because the outpost liaison, the people that you trade with, will want to have discussions with your mayor so that you can tell them what items you want the merchants to bring next year.
Right.
They can't do that if you've got them locked up. But you can't have a vampire running loose in your fort because you're just going to lose dwarves randomly. So it's sort of like, then you've got to unfortunately get rid of them. You haven't really got a choice.
A nuanced answer. I do view them as a fun challenge. I don't think I've ever went out of my way to get them killed. I always view them as alright, here's the next logical progression in my fort. Let's try to put something nice together. It's a gameplay incentive to be fancy, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's kind of cool. It's a mixture of function and form, where now maybe I do use gold as a building material, where normally I wouldn't.
And there are some nobles that you can get attached to when you're building your fort up and it's becoming like a city, and the outpost liaison will come and be like, okay, we're going to grant you a barony, and you get to pick which dwarf gets it.
Yeah.
And you could pick one of your favorite dwarves, so you can become really attached to a noble. Or you can just be like, nah, I don't want to politics. I don't want to listen to the man. I left the kingdom because fuck you guys, and just kill any noble that comes within 50 feet of you.
Well, see, that's where, again, this is me with my demands. I want to see dwarven communes. I want to see penal colonies. I want to see local nobility, but they don't automatically become the capital of the whole civilization later on. Because sometimes it's a little silly, where oops, I forgot to switch which civilization I'm starting as, and I'm halfway across the world. But if I get rich enough, I'm the mountain home now. And yeah. So I would like to see more variation there. yeah. I shouldn't be able to take over the entire country because I've 3D printed enough statues, and I've attracted the nobility here.
Reasonable requests, reasonable demands.
I wanted to know, because I met you through Dwarf Fortress, I think, on Twitch.
Yes.
What other games do you play?
I enjoy my puzzles. I'm very much a platformer, and I believe the term is boomer shooter. I love fast-paced shooters. Doom, favorite game. Favorite game. Yeah, I think those are generally the games I gravitate towards. My gaming started with DOS games, so I'm a PC gamer at heart, always. And it was a little demo disc, and I believe the original Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem, those sorts of ones were on there. And I just played the ever-loving shit out of them, and they've stuck with me ever since. So I'm definitely a good old-fashioned boomer shooter. Are up there for me. A fast platformer, and I love a good puzzle. When I heard that they were getting a new Professor Layton game, I lost my shit.
I'm not surprised by the puzzle thing, because Dwarf Fortress is a very I don't know. I'd say it's a thinking person's game. You got to really use your brain a ton.
I'm surprised that Dwarf Fortress has its hooks in me.
Really?
I'm not really a fan of civ builders. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of micromanaging.
That's crazy to me.
Dwarf Fortress has its hooks in me. I think it started with RimWorld first. And then I was introduced to the Dwarf Fortress pipeline. I was introduced to Dwarf Fortress through Krugsmash, and I think that's what got me to the storytelling side of it, because Krugsmash is a phenomenal storyteller and a phenomenal artist as well, and that got me hooked. It took me a few goes to get into it, and it wasn't until I started streaming it that I really was like, yep, this is it. This is my life now. This is my personality trait. I'm sticking with it. And yeah, but other civ builders, colony games, not interested.
I'm
not a fan.
I'm probably gonna try to push some on you at some point, but
I can imagine.
I respect it though. Although it's just that'd be like if I said like, yeah, I'm not really a big first-person shooter guy, but I'm gonna hop on CS:GO later. I fucking love CS:GO. I play it every day. It's like this is the like micromanaging colony sim to end all micromanaging colony sims.
I think that's why though.
Yeah, it's you said the story like it's so detailed. It like transcends that because I think I see what you're saying because like RimWorld, I tried playing it and I was like, where's the Z levels? What are these little guys all about? Like, where's their family? What do they believe in and shit? And like, not to knock RimWorld, I played it a little bit and it seems plenty fun, but yeah, it wasn't that same. I don't see a narrative evolving as I play through it as much as I do with Dwarf Fortress.
Absolutely. Like, I could only play RimWorld modded up to Hell and High Water, and the DLC that have come out for it in recent have, added to that depth. But Dwarf Fortress it's so detailed on so many different levels. The smallest one of each one of your individual dwarves, all the way up to the entire world and civilizations and wars and dragons and all these sorts of really big things. And I think it's that level of detail that really can get you attached to these forts and to these dwarves, which makes you want to keep playing and want to get better so you can keep them alive and keep this story going and just find out what happens next, because it's very much a natural progression and the game will just randomly throw things at you. It's not like, I believe in RimWorld, it's very much, things will happen after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Or you haven't, nothing interesting's happened to you for a while, we're going to send something at you, that sort of stuff. But Dwarf Fortress is, the world is alive. You're just living in it and hoping for the best. And I think that's what I enjoy so much about it. It's more than just a game.
Damn. That is we should snip that and make that like the advertisement for the game. Because I think that really does capture why people have been playing a game that for a while didn't even fucking have graphics really. You had the ASCII stuff, but it is so in-depth, it is so fun that it's been a cult classic. And I really do hope that the Steam release continues to draw more people in. It's
absolutely,
it's phenomenal.
Absolutely. The fact that it has a tutorial now and tooltips and can help you out.
You can use a mouse now.
Yeah, you could use a mouse.
Oh my god.
It's great. It's definitely a lot more user-friendly, but my experience with the Dwarf Fortress community is they're all lovely and are happy to help.
Yeah.
For the most part. That's definitely the main reason that I kept going. I was scared about playing, streaming Dwarf Fortress because it is such a niche game and I didn't know what the main player base would be like, because, you find with small niche indie titles, they can sometimes be a little bit elitist.
On the internet?
Yeah, I know, right?
What the hell?
And so I'm like, you know what? I'll try. I'll give it a go. And I was playing it, and it's just nothing but help and kind words. Of course, you're going to have your odd person who's a little bit, why haven't you got a well yet? You need to build a well. And I'm like, no, I fucking don't. Where's your pump stack? You need to make a pump stack to make a well. Piss off. Like, you're going to have those sorts of people. But for the most part, they're all wonderful and happy to help you out, and but also let you find your own way and have quote-unquote fun. There's,
and I don't even know how it got started, but all the lingo and the ways to let new players explore the game spoiler-free. I think that's one of the coolest parts about the community is just... Because when you go into like any FromSoft stream, you're bound to, and if it's like a first time playthrough, you're always going to have someone say, "Did you find this yet? Did you fight this guy?" And in Dwarf Fortress, it's like an unspoken rule that you don't tell people some of the things that can pop up. You just let it happen.
Yeah, you just go. You tell them. You just wait till you've visited the circus.
Say hi to the clowns for me. I have no easy way of segueing into this. So I'm just going to dive right in. I've seen you talk a few times on your streams about the books that you read.
Yes.
Some scenes I've had to explicitly ask not be mentioned during this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go into Mack's stream later and ask them about the scene, but we will not talk about it here.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the weirdest book you have read?
Okay. So I read a lot of sci-fi, classic sci-fi in particular. I read a lot as a kid. I sort of got that gifted kid burnout. It took me a long time to get back into reading, which I've been trying to do. And I've read a lot of weird shit. Let's be real. That's what sci-fi is. It's just weird shit in space. It's the future. But I'm not going to say it is that. So I'm from Australia. I grew up in Australia, which means I grew up with Australian literature as a kid. And I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I can say that growing up, the kids' books that I read were fucking wild. A few favourites were Sing and Poo, which is about a cat that ate a small radio and pooped it out.
Oh.
So it was called Sing and Poo.
When you said cat, I was like, oh, it's not about the obvious.
No, it's about the obvious.
Okay.
Yeah. Another classic is The Day My Bum Went Psycho, and its sequel, Zombie Bums from Uranus, and the end of the trilogy, Bumageddon: The Final Conflict.
What's the target age range for that?
Like tweens.
Okay.
Like these are kids' books, but they were very much just gross. You know, I remember some of the titles were just disgusting. That was it. Just disgusting was the title of the book. Like that's the sort of thing that these were for us. So Paul Jennings and Andy Griffiths were like, these were two authors that I grew up with that wrote some really just, you know, highbrow humor.
Sounds like
Rip jokes, fart jokes, but, you know, the works. And that's just the weird stuff. Have you ever heard of a little show called Round the Twist?
I have not.
So, Round the Twist is a classic Australian TV show that I'm pretty sure it probably gave some kids nightmares, but it was just weird. And feel free to cut this bit out if it's too much, but my favourite episode, or the one that sticks with me, the one that is in my mind at all times and I will never be able to forget, is the episode about one of the kids pisses on a tree and then gets pregnant from the nymph that's living in the tree and belches the baby out, and the baby is green.
Well, that sounds more like ancient Greek show to me than Australian.
It's wild. I'm pretty sure there's another one where the kid's dick turns into propeller and he wins like a swimming race with it.
What?
And then there's the crazy clown, and it's just some really wild things. And that they were originally books by Paul Jennings. And this is my favorite title of all time. I had to look this up to remember to get it right because it's a long one. So it's How Hedley Hopkins Did a Dare, Robbed a Grave, Made a New Friend Who Might Not Have Been There at All, and while he was at it committed a terrible sin that everyone was doing even though he didn't know it. That's the full book title.
Holy shit.
Those, for me, I think, are some of the weirdest books I've ever read, and nothing has topped them yet.
That is a far more PG response than I was expecting, given the stuff that I've heard in the past. But also, yeah, very, very bizarre. There's like grotesque or vulgar bizarre, and then there's just truly out there, outlandish, silly, wacky, bizarre. Yeah,
and I think that's what kids want, in my opinion. Is they want the gross stuff that makes them go, but they keep reading. I believe there was a South Park episode about where they read, I don't remember what the book was, but they were told it was, going to be very grown up and gross, and they were reading through it and nothing happened, so they wrote their own book, and it just made the parents vomit constantly. Yeah, that's what kids want.
They do.
That's what I wanted as a kid. That weird stuff. And don't get me wrong, I've read, like, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a lot of stuff by Terry Pratchett. Like, those are weird books, but they're still reasonable.
They're grounded, yeah.
They're grounded. They make sense. Even the book that I dare not speak of because of that one scene was grounded for the most part. It was weird, but it wasn't like it was satire. You know?
Yeah.
I definitely think those kids' books have to be the weirdest stuff that I've read.
Okay.
And I would read them again in a heartbeat.
Mentioning children getting nightmares, I just want to... I didn't even think about this until you started bringing up, like, freaky books. There's a book that was in our library back in elementary school called Talipo, and it was about a man living in a cabin in the woods with his hunting dogs, and he goes out into the swamp to hunt something for food, and he only manages to, like, catch this little animal and cut its tail off, and it runs away. And then it taunts him and stalks him for the rest of the story. It lures his dogs away into the swamp, and presumably they either get lost and die, or it kills them. The story ends with it getting into his house, and it's the size of, like, a cat, but it completely levels the house, and the guy is presumably either buried under the rubble or ripped apart. And we read that in, like, first grade. Maybe second. I was like, looking back, I'm like, what the hell were we supposed to learn from that? What was the moral? Why did we read this?
Who knows? I remember a book that part of me believes it was a fever dream because I've tried to look it up and I can't find it. I believe it was a horrible histories book though, but it was called Sick. And the premise of the book was to teach kids about illnesses, but in the most grotesque way imaginable. Basically this little girl gets a CD in the mail and, you know, she puts it in the computer, and the book goes on to discuss about all the gross side of medicine way back when, and how we came up with certain discoveries, and, you know, how we used to treat smallpox and all this sort of stuff. And I remember there was this one panel that just showed a guy throwing up, eating it, throwing up, eating it, throwing up, eating it multiple times. And for the longest time, I swear it was a fever dream. I asked a kid who went to the same primary school with me, who, you know, probably would have seen it in the library there, and he doesn't know anything about it. So it could be a fever dream, but I don't think it is.
Anyone listening, find that book. That's
I want it.
Yeah, find that shit. Want that on Mac's desk a week from
yesterday.
Whenever this airs. I don't know when this is coming out.
Yeah, it's just... Kids' books are great, because they're gross. I want the gross stuff. I don't want to be coddled or, you know, bubble wrapped or cushioned or what have you. Give it to me straight, in the grossest way possible.
Yeah, I wish Talipo had torn my house down when I was a child. This has been a treat. Mac, is there any place we can find you online? Anything you want to shout out before we wrap up the episode?
Yeah, so you can find me streaming on Twitch at TrashMack, also on YouTube as TrashMack, and I post my artifacts on Reddit in the Dwarf Fortress r/Dwarf Fortress on the Reddit there as TrashyMack. TrashMack was taken, so I had to put a Y in it. The bastards.
TrashyMack, if you're listening, do the right thing. Give it up, okay?
Give it up.
Give it up.
Give it up. I need it. Should be for me. But yeah, no, that's about it. I mean, I've got an Instagram, but I don't really use it. But that's TrashMack as well. That's me. Come to my streams. Come say hi. We talk about tea, books, Dwarf Fortress, and some other interesting things.
Yeah.
I'll let you find that out.
Yeah, a little secret. You can't give it all away, otherwise they don't have to show up. Yeah, don't tell them about the panda just yet.
No, not yet.
Yeah. All right, well, I only have one question left for you, Mac.
I've been waiting all week for this.
Oh my god, you seem like the only person who's ever been enthusiastic about it.
I am so enthusiastic about this.
All right, say the line, Mac.
NPC, you later.
Fantastic.